Hello, my name is Brianna Harris, and I'll be going over my objectives page for game art and animation. Here is the main page with a brief overview of what I'll be discussing today. Starting with Objective 1, we will be demonstrating and communicating the aesthetic skills and choices based on traditional art theories and the current game development practices and next generation research. For Objective 1, I have posted art from a previous degree that transferred over to UAT. This prior art includes consist of color theory, ceramics, 3D design, elements, and more. For these two projects here, these are both from Illustrator 1 class, I believe. This one was a project called Tsukitomoe, which I later used for another project here at UAT. The second one here is a self-portrait that we had to also do in Illustrator, basically taking a bunch of random shapes and piecing it together to create a self-portrait. I went a step further and I liked the idea so much that I included the items in the background as well, such as my shirt that had a palm tree on there, as well as the doorknob that I was posing against as well. In my 2D class, we were challenged in taking ordinary objects and turning it into different shapes. So this one, I took a Red Bull can and I posed it as a Polaroid image of all the things that happened to this can. So this is our 100 line theory. We had to take an abstract drawing and create 100 lines out of it. For this one, we had to take a fruit and basically use different types of media to change it. So here we use gouache, watercolor, charcoal, cross hatching, and other types of media in order to change the image. For this one, it was an abstract painting that we had to do as well. This one was only using paint and one item. So I decided to use string and I created this abstract drawing. At first, it wasn't supposed to look like anything. However, eventually it turned into this beautiful koi fish that I eventually started to use gold paint on as well to enhance the colors. Last but not least, we had a ceramics class as well. This one is a 25-pound panda that I had created when I started. Unfortunately, COVID happened, so we actually had to finish these at home. So this was the final pieces after firing. For Objective 2, we were asked to conceptualize and generate pre-production art assets through pre-visualization and prototypes usable for multiple game platforms. So here I will be demonstrating what we use for a 2D game as well as 3D game assets. To start, for 3ds Max, we were able to create some tools as well as our first robot. For here, these are the 2D assets I created, and from the previous objective, this is Suki Tomoe as well. Sheet, I like to call it, for the game that I created for her. Here is the environment scene, also created with Illustrator and Photoshop, that I use for the game. And these are the assets that were also created for it. For Objective 3, we were asked to demonstrate a cross-section of baseline skills needed to create 2D and 3D art, textures, and animation assets utilizing industry-standard software tools. So in Objective 3, I believe I really started to grow as an artist, and I learned a lot about 3D modeling, and it really let my creativity fly. So for Objective 3, we not only used 3ds Max, but we also used Photoshop and Maya as well. For these items, I also went a step further and decided to learn some other tools of the trade as well, such as Blender. We also briefly used ZBrush as well. So here we were able to create a human model using ZBrush to create muscles as well as certain fabrics. Blender. We also briefly used ZBrush as well. So here we were able to create a human model using ZBrush to create muscles as well as certain fabrics as well. I used a mix of 3D art objects as well as Photoshop in order to create a realistic scene. Here I created the mad scientist at work scene as well as some flowers used for Photoshop while using this 3D technique to create a vase. For Objective 4, we were asked to create industry quality 2D and 3D art assets such as characters, props, textures, environment elements, and collision objects, or animation keyframed and motion captured capture characters. So here are a couple of videos of how I did the animation scenes for the various projects that we worked on here at UAT. Starting with the first one, using Construct 3. This was the first 2D game that I created. Here we were working on vehicle animations, and I was able to uh, create the vehicle moving in a circle, as well as the wheels and everything too in Maya. For this one, this is actually from my SIP project. This was able to use the characters, and you can see him walking around, as well as the 3D library handmade by me and the textures as well. For this one is the underwater lab. Basically, it was a submarine submerged all the way to the bottom of the floor. In the background, you can see the lights and the shadows from the various creatures and the plants that were there. You have the 3D scene of the desk and the chairs, as well as the screens. Here is the section for creating 3D textures using Substance Painter and Substance Designer together. Here you can see the lights and the shadows that are on there for the various projects that we did. This one was used to create a dirt floor that was wet, and this one was used to create the wood grain texture. I was able to use these references in order to create the 3D scenes from my SIP project, as this one was the gate, the Grand Gate, and this one was the actual classroom for that project as well. This one was where we demonstrated the collaboration, mentorship, and professional leadership skills, working on other disciplines for highly polished and completed projects. So I was able to work with a group for a VR game called Traffic Cop, where I was tasked to create the vehicles for the game, which wasn't my strong suit. However, I am really proud of the progress that I made when creating them, as this was one of the first vehicles that I created versus what I ended up with in the game. They asked for low poly vehicles, so not too much details, where I usually work on high detailed projects for myself. So creating this gave me a feel of what was expected and how to adapt to those changes out in the real world. And here again is that other car project, as well as I was showcasing what I learned from various projects in order to create this. And that is the end of my objectives. And thank you for watching.